because appearance is visible. And humans often strike what is visible when they cannot understand what is invisible. They sensed your gentleness, your depth, your calling, your quiet strength, and so they mocked the outer person because they could not reach the inner one. Do not underestimate how often wounded people try to transfer shame onto others. A bitter soul searches constantly for mirrors to throw its pain into, but you must refuse to carry what was never yours. Do not wear labels that heaven never wrote out your life. The world changes standards every decade. One generation worships one image, then destroys it in the next. Fashion changes, culture changes, faces age, bodies weaken, but the soul remains, and one day every human being will stand stripped of titles, filters, cosmetics, applause, and reputation. Only truth will remain then, not popularity, not physical perfection, not public approval. Truth. And in that moment, many who felt ugly on earth will shine like suns because suffering built compassion inside them. Some of the kindest people in this world became kind because they knew what humiliation felt like. Some of the deepest souls were formed in rejection. Pain often digs wells that pride never could. So do not despise the breaking seasons. God does strange and holy work inside wounded hearts. He teaches them how to see others differently, how to speak gently, how to notice loneliness in crowded rooms, how to become refuge instead of judgment. The people who have suffered deeply often become safest for others. And perhaps heaven allowed you to feel this pain so you would never become careless with another human spirit, because words are never just words. A sentence can become a scar or a sanctuary. Some people are still healing from comments spoken 10 years ago. Never underestimate the power of the tongue. A cruel mouth can destroy confidence in minutes that took God years to build in secret. That is why mature souls speak carefully. They understand every person they meet is carrying invisible battles. And if you are the one who was wounded, hear this. Do not seek revenge through becoming colder. Do not answer mockery with bitterness. Do not poison your spirit trying to punish theirs. Stay soft. The world has enough hard people already. Guard your tenderness. Guard your humanity. Guard the sacredness of your heart, because pain can either deepen you or deform you. Choose depth, and the next time you walk into a room, do not enter begging silently for approval. Remembering whose image you carry. Not everyone will understand your worth. Not everyone will recognize your beauty. Not everyone will honor your spirit. But their blindness does not reduce your value. A man lost in darkness cannot judge the sun. So lift your head again, not in arrogance, but in quiet certainty. You survived words that tried to bury your confidence. You survived rooms that made you feel small. You survived seasons of doubting your reflection. And still you are here, still breathing, still becoming, still loved by heaven. And perhaps one day the very face they mocked will carry such peace, wisdom, and light that people will feel the presence of God simply by looking into your eyes. Because the greatest beauty a human being can possess is not found in appearance. It is found in a soul transformed by grace. There are moments in life when a single sentence spoken by another person enters the heart more violently than a physical wound. A room full of people may forget the moment within minutes, yet the soul that received the words carries them for years. Human beings often underestimate the weight of speech because words cannot be seen once they leave the mouth. They vanish into the air, invisible and seemingly harmless. But heaven does not measure words the way people do. Heaven hears the intention behind them, the pride inside them, the cruelty hidden beneath laughter, and the silent tears produced after everyone else has moved on. Many people have learned how to smile while bleeding internally. Someone comments on their face, their body, their voice, their weakness, or their appearance, and the room erupts with awkward amusement. The victim often laughs too, not because the pain is absent, but because survival sometimes disguises itself as agreement. Inside, however, something collapses. A person suddenly becomes aware of themselves in the worst possible way. They begin questioning how they look, how they sound, how others perceive them. One careless remark becomes a mirror they cannot stop staring into. But what human beings call small comments, heaven often records as heavy moments. God listens differently than man listens. People hear entertainment, heaven hears damage. People hear sarcasm, heaven hears arrows entering the human spirit. People move on quickly because they do not feel the consequences of the words they release. Yet the Creator understands exactly how fragile and sacred the human heart is. This is why mockery is never as innocent as people pretend it is. The soul was not designed for humiliation. Human beings were formed with dignity, carrying the breath of God Himself, and when a person is publicly shamed, something holy is being violated. That is why deep insults linger for years. The wound is not merely emotional, it touches identity itself. There are people walking through life today who still remember comments spoken over them in childhood. A teacher embarrassed them publicly. A parent compared them to others. Friends mocked their appearance. Strangers laughed at their insecurity. Those moments became internal voices that continued speaking long after the original speakers disappeared. Some individuals no longer even need enemies because the cruel sentences spoken years ago now repeat automatically inside their own minds. And still, heaven hears not only the original wound, but every sleepless night afterward, every mirror avoided, every social gathering feared, every photograph deleted, every moment of self-hatred born from words carelessly spoken by others. God sees the hidden suffering people concealed beneath ordinary behavior. Many who appear calm externally are carrying invisible injuries internally. Some people became quiet because of humiliation. Some became overly pleasing because they fear rejection. Some became perfectionists because they learned early that love seemed conditional upon performance or appearance. Human beings adapt to pain in strange ways, but heaven remembers where the pain began. There is also a terrifying reality many never consider. Words reveal the condition of the speaker more than the target. Cruel people expose themselves every time they speak carelessly about another human being. Mockery often comes from insecurity, bitterness, pride, jealousy, or emptiness. Broken souls frequently attempt to transfer their wounds onto others because pain seeks somewhere to live. A person at peace rarely humiliates another person publicly. This is why spiritually mature individuals become careful with speech. They understand they are handling human hearts every time they open their mouths. They know that a sentence can either strengthen someone or secretly destroy them. Even casual gatherings become sacred opportunities to either heal or wound another soul. Heaven notices both. Every gentle word spoken to the insecure, every defense made for the embarrassed person in the room. Every moment, someone chose kindness when cruelty would have gained laughter and social approval. God hears compassion too. He hears mercy. He hears restraint. He hears the quiet voice that refuses to join humiliation simply because the crowd enjoys it. And for the wounded person, there is something important to understand. The voice of man is not the final authority over identity. Human opinions shift constantly. Crowds praise one day and destroy the next. Society changes its standards endlessly. But God does not evaluate people according to temporary cultural measurements. Heaven does not rank souls according to physical beauty, popularity, or public admiration. Many individuals who were rejected by society carried extraordinary worth that shallow people simply lacked the wisdom to recognize. Some of the purest hearts have lived beneath criticism. Some of the most compassionate souls were shaped through rejection. Pain deepens certain people in ways comfort never could. God often works powerfully inside those the world underestimated. The insult that tried to produce shame may eventually produce wisdom instead. The rejection that created insecurity may one day create compassion for others who feel unseen. Wounded people who refuse bitterness frequently become safe places for broken souls because they understand pain intimately. They know the cost of careless speech, so they become gentle with others. Heaven watches these transformations carefully. Not everyone who mocked you will understand what their words created inside you. Some people never think deeply enough to recognize the damage they caused. But God knows. He witnessed every hidden tear and every silent prayer whispered after public humiliation. He understands the battles nobody else saw. And while people judged outward appearance, heaven continued, looking directly at the soul. Human beings spend much of their lives searching for approval without realizing how exhausting that search truly becomes. From childhood, people are trained to measure themselves through the reactions of others. A child looks at the faces around them to determine whether they are lovable, valuable, intelligent, attractive, or acceptable. Slowly, the opinions of people become mirrors, and many souls lose the ability to recognize themselves apart from those reflections. This is why rejection feels so devastating to many individuals. It appears to threaten their worth itself. A harsh comment, a failed relationship, public embarrassment, social exclusion or criticism suddenly becomes more than an unpleasant experience. It becomes evidence, at least in their minds, that they are somehow less valuable as human beings. But human approval was never designed to carry the weight of identity. The approval of people is unstable because people themselves are unstable. Human beings are emotional creatures. Their opinions change with moods, trends, insecurities, jealousy, pride, and circumstances. Someone may celebrate you today and criticize you tomorrow for the very same qualities they once admired. Crowds are notoriously inconsistent. History repeatedly proves that society often rejects what heaven values most deeply. Many individuals destroy themselves trying to earn acceptance from people who are equally lost inside themselves. They shape their personalities according to trends, alter their appearance to fit temporary standards, silence their true thoughts to avoid rejection, and slowly become strangers to their own souls. They trade authenticity for applause, not realizing applause fades quickly while inner emptiness remains. There is a frightening loneliness that develops when a person builds identity entirely upon approval. They become emotionally dependent upon external reactions. Compliments temporarily lift them, while criticism completely destroys them. Their peace becomes controlled by the moods and opinions of others. Such a life creates constant fear because human approval is impossible to permanently secure. No matter how beautiful someone becomes, another person will still criticize them. No matter how talented someone is, another individual will still feel threatened by them. No matter how kind someone behaves, another heart will misunderstand them. Human beings are incapable of providing the perfect validation the soul longs for. That longing exists because the soul was never meant to find its worth in human applause. A person's value existed before anyone formed an opinion about them, before crowds approved or rejected them, before social status developed, before appearance was criticized or praised. Human worth originates from something far deeper than popularity. The Creator himself decided humanity was worthy of existence. This truth confronts one of the greatest lies of modern culture: the belief that visibility equals value. Many people now feel invisible unless they are admired publicly. They measure importance through attention, followers, compliments, relationships, or recognition. Silence terrifies them because they mistake lack of applause for lack of worth. Yet some of the most precious souls in history lived unnoticed by crowds. The world often overlooks depth because shallow eyes are drawn toward spectacle. Society celebrates charisma while ignoring character. It rewards appearance while neglecting integrity, but heaven sees differently. God examines motives, hidden pain, private kindness, humility, faithfulness, and sincerity, qualities human beings frequently ignore because they cannot be easily displayed. This is why many people who appear successful externally still feel deeply empty internally. Approval cannot heal identity wounds. Public admiration cannot replace inner peace. Some individuals receive constant compliments, yet secretly despise themselves because human praise cannot permanently silence insecurity. The soul always knows when it is starving for something deeper. There are people who walk into rooms desperately hoping to be noticed because they fear what silence might say about them. They overperform, over-explain, overcompensate, and exhaust themselves emotionally trying to maintain acceptance. But acceptance earned through performance creates constant anxiety because the individual knows they must continually maintain the image others expect. This becomes a prison. The fear of losing approval eventually controls behavior, speech, personality, and even spiritual conviction. Many people compromise truth simply to remain accepted by certain groups. Others tolerate disrespect because they fear abandonment more than dishonor. Some spend years pretending to be someone they are not because rejection feels unbearable to them. But freedom begins when a person realizes human approval was never the source of their worth. A diamond remains valuable even if nobody recognizes it immediately. Its worth is not created by human awareness. In the same way, the human soul possesses intrinsic value because it was intentionally formed by God. This value cannot be increased by praise or decreased by criticism. Insults may wound emotions, but they cannot alter divine truth. This does not mean rejection stops hurting. Human beings are relational creatures, and painful words affect them deeply. But there is a difference between feeling pain and surrendering identity to that pain. A spiritually grounded person may grieve criticism without allowing criticism to define them. Such individuals become difficult to manipulate because they are no longer enslaved to approval. They can walk away from toxic environments without collapsing internally. They can endure misunderstanding without abandoning themselves. They can remain gentle without becoming desperate for validation. This kind of freedom often confuses people. The world expects insecurity because insecurity is common. Entire systems profit from convincing human beings they are incomplete without external affirmation. Many industries survive by feeding dissatisfaction. They continually move the standard further away. So people remain emotionally dependent upon approval and consumption. But God never created human beings to live begging for permission to feel valuable. The soul becomes healthier when it learns to rest in truth instead of reactions. Some people will misunderstand you no matter how pure your intentions are. Others will reject you simply because your existence exposes their own insecurity. Some individuals cannot appreciate your worth because they are too wounded to recognize goodness clearly. Their blindness does not reduce your value. A starving person may fail to recognize gold because hunger distorts perception. In the same way, emotionally wounded individuals often misjudge others because pain clouds their vision. This is why wise people stop allowing wounded crowds to determine their identity. The human heart was designed to receive love, but not to build its entire existence upon the unstable opinions of man. One of the saddest realities about human behavior is that wounded people often spread pain without fully realizing they are doing it. Hurt rarely remains still inside the human soul. It seeks expression. It leaks into speech, attitudes, relationships, and reactions. A person carrying deep insecurity may enter a room smiling outwardly while unconsciously searching for someone else to diminish. Brokenness that is not healed eventually becomes transferred. This is why some individuals speak cruelly to people who never harmed them. The attack is rarely about the target alone. It is often the overflow of battles hidden inside the attacker. Human beings project internally carried shame onto others because pain desires companionship. Misery frequently searches for mirrors. A person deeply dissatisfied with themselves may become unusually critical of appearance in others. Someone who secretly feels powerless may constantly seek control over people around them. An individual who grew up humiliated may humiliate others before they themselves can feel vulnerable again. The human heart has strange defense mechanisms, and many people spend years hurting others while believing they are simply being honest, funny, strong, or superior. But heaven sees beneath behavior into wounds. Many cruel people are not cruel because they are powerful. They are cruel because they are weak internally and terrified of confronting that weakness honestly. Mockery becomes armor. Arrogance becomes camouflage. Judgment becomes distraction. Some people criticize others constantly because silence would force them to face their own emptiness. This does not excuse harmful behavior, but it explains much of it. There are individuals who enter every conversation carrying invisible bitterness from old betrayals, rejection, abandonment, neglect, or humiliation. Instead of healing those wounds, they build identities around them. The pain slowly reshapes their personality until cynicism feels normal and tenderness feels dangerous. They become emotionally defensive people who strike before they can be struck. This is why deeply wounded individuals sometimes attack innocent people unexpectedly. A harmless comment triggers buried pain. Someone's confidence reminds them of what they lost. Another person's beauty exposes their insecurity. Another person's peace irritates the chaos within them, and suddenly they react with sarcasm, contempt, criticism, or hostility that seems disproportionate to the situation. The wound is speaking louder than the moment itself. People often assume maturity comes automatically with age, but many adults are simply older versions of wounded children. Their bodies grew, but their inner injuries remained untreated. The bullied child becomes the controlling adult. The rejected teenager becomes the emotionally manipulative partner. The humiliated student becomes the boss who humiliates employees. Pain repeats itself through generations when healing does not interrupt it. This is why spiritually wise individuals learn not to take every insult personally. Not every cruel word is truly about them. Sometimes they are simply standing in front of unresolved suffering inside another human being. The attack reveals the condition of the attacker more than the worth of the victim. A bitter soul eventually interprets life through bitterness. Such people struggle to celebrate others genuinely because another person's joy reminds them of their own unhappiness. They struggle to speak kindly because gentleness feels unfamiliar to them. They often mistake cruelty for strength because vulnerability terrifies them. There are people who laugh loudly at others because they secretly fear becoming the object of laughter themselves. Some dominate conversations because they fear invisibility. Some insult appearance because they secretly despise their own reflection. Some constantly compete because they believe love must be earned through superiority. Brokenness disguises itself in many forms. This is why emotional pain is so dangerous when left untreated. Unhealed wounds rarely remain private. They shape entire environments. A wounded parent can fill a home with criticism. A wounded leader can create toxic workplaces. A wounded friend can poison relationships with jealousy and insecurity. One unresolved heart can spread darkness far beyond itself. And tragically, many people normalize this behavior because woundedness has become common. Entire social groups bond through mockery. Cruel humor becomes entertainment. Public humiliation becomes social currency. People wound each other casually while calling it honesty or confidence. Yet beneath much of this behavior lies deep emotional starvation. Healthy souls do not enjoy diminishing others. A person genuinely at peace rarely needs to humiliate someone to feel important. They do not search constantly for flaws because they are not obsessed with protecting fragile egos. Secure people have room to be gentle. Healed people become safe places for others because they are no longer driven by internal chaos. This is why healing matters spiritually as much as emotionally. An unhealed heart distorts perception. People begin projecting their fears, shame, and resentment onto everyone around them. They stop seeing others clearly because pain becomes the lens through which they interpret life. Some individuals accuse others of rejection before rejection even occurs. Some assume judgment where none exists. Others sabotage healthy relationships because past wounds taught them to expect abandonment. Trauma trains the nervous system to anticipate danger even in safe environments. And unless healing happens, the wounded person eventually becomes the wound they carry. This creates cycles of suffering across generations and communities. Children inherit insecurities from parents. Friends inherit bitterness from social groups. Entire cultures normalize emotional damage because nobody pauses long enough to heal honestly. But healing begins when a person finally stops projecting pain outward and starts confronting it inwardly. It takes courage to admit that certain reactions are rooted in unresolved wounds. It takes humility to recognize that some harsh behaviors were born from personal insecurity rather than truth. Many people would rather continue hurting others than face themselves honestly because self-examination feels frightening. Yet transformation only becomes possible when truth is faced directly. A healed person speaks differently because they no longer need to protect a wounded ego constantly. They stop competing unnecessarily. They stop searching for people to diminish. They stop using sarcasm as emotional camouflage. Compassion grows naturally when pain is processed correctly. People who heal deeply often become unusually kind because they understand how dangerous emotional wounds truly are. They know what one cruel sentence can do to a fragile spirit. They know how loneliness feels. They know the exhaustion of insecurity and rejection. And because they know suffering personally, they become careful with the hearts of others. Wounded people may project pain onto others, but healed people project peace.